I will not go too deep into my backstory, nor will I share too much personal information about myself, but I will tell you this. I have always been a reclusive person ever since I was a young child. I never had many friends. I spent my time inside playing video games on whatever computer or console I had at the time. As I grew older into my high school years, found myself getting into long walks and exploring the quiet places around town. I would wander through the woods, I would drift through cemeteries, and soon I developed an obsession with trespassing, going into places where I was never supposed to be. It began with sneaking into graveyards at night just to feel the stillness. Then it became more dangerous. Abandoned hospitals, schools, anything I could find. When I finally learned to drive, it made these trips easier than ever, and I could reach places far away. I did not often bring people with me. Once or twice I had a friend come along, but in truth I preferred going alone. Part of my strange personality was that I felt no fear in the dark, inside a forgotten place at night. Perhaps I should say I used to feel no fear, because what happened changed that forever. I would find many of these places by going on Google Earth, zooming into rural areas and looking for structures that seemed to be abandoned. Then I would make a list of 5 or 10 and try to visit them all in one day. Some were still I lived in, but I got good at judging which ones were not. Most of the time this meant walking deep into the woods. Yes, I had a job, a low-paying one, stocking shelves at a supermarket. But when I was not working or in school, I would be out exploring. One of the places on my list one afternoon was an abandoned church. I parked on a dirt road and began walking. It took about 10 minutes. I wore jeans and boots so I could move quickly through the brush without getting cut or scratched. The first thing I noticed were rusted garbage cans and scraps of old junk scattered in the trees, and I knew I was close. Through the thinning branches I saw a clearing, and there it was, a broken, rotting church sitting alone in the woods. The roof was sagging, the paint long peeled. There was an old stone well out front. I walked to it, expecting to see a wooden cover, but it was open. I looked down. It was so deep that all I could see was blackness, and as I stood there I heard something faint down below. It was a click. One click every 2 seconds. Not like dripping water, but more like a stick tapping on stone. The sound held me like a strange rhythm, and I stared down far longer than I should have. Finally, I forced myself to step away and walk toward the porch. The boards creaked under my weight, and the double doors were already slightly open. The hinges groaned when I pushed one door farther. The air inside was heavy with dust. The scent of old wood and mold light filtered through shattered, stained glass. Some pews were knocked over, others missing entirely. The pulpit leaned forward, and behind it an arched doorway led into darkness. I swept my flashlight slowly around and took a few photographs for my collection. There was something beautiful about the decay of a church, a place meant for worship, now left to crumble. I moved to the arched doorway and stepped through into a narrow hallway lined with splintered doors. One door was missing, another hung loose, cobwebs draped from the ceiling. At the far end of the hall, a staircase descended into the basement. Jackpot. I thought basements always promised something interesting, though this time I felt a chill looking into the dark. Below still, I went down the first step, creaked. Then another. I counted 7 before my right foot hit one that broke completely, and I fell straight down into the dirt and debris. Below, pain shot through my back and tailbone. I cursed under my breath. My flashlight had flown from my hand, and I crawled over to grab it. That was when I heard a voice, high-pitched, maybe a woman or a young boy. It spoke words, but they made no sense, except for one, the word hello. The rest was garbled, like someone trying to speak without knowing. How I spun in place, shining the beam across stone walls and broken furniture. And then I saw it, a tunnel carved into the wall. It looked like it had been dug by hand, and the voice was coming from inside. I stepped toward it because curiosity still ruled me. The rough earthen walls closed and the light flickered and nearly went out. I banged the flashlight, and the noise seemed to stir the voice. It grew louder, still gibberish, still wrong, but closer. Then silence. Total silence. until the clicking sound returned exactly like the one from the well. I turned and ran. I hauled myself up the basement stairs, grabbing the sides to avoid the broken step. I dropped the flashlight, but I did not stop. I raced through the hall, out the main doors, past the well, the clicking gone, the woods silent, not even a bird. I glanced one last time down into that blackness, and then I ran until I reached my car. I drove home. Without music, without a word. My exploring hobby did not end that day, but I took a long break, and even now, I do not know what was really in that church. The second time trespassing nearly broke me was with my friends John and Anthony. We liked the outdoors, and one day we decided to fish near farmland. We were chased away by a farmer and his dog. He threatened to call the police, but he was already on the phone with someone else, which struck me as strange. We laughed it off and decided the next day to sneak back, not for fishing this time, but to explore. It was an hour before dark. When we reached the fence line, the property was massive, stretching for acres. The woods were thick and easy to get lost in, but eventually we came upon a run-down house with expensive cars scattered around, some stripped for parts. Corvettes, Bentleys, Ferraris, even an old RV clearly lived in. We did not break anything, we just looked. Anthony kept watch while John explored the RV. Inside was bedding, food, fishing rods, and oddly more car tires. Deeper on the property, we found a shed reeking of decay. The smell was so bad we joked about bodies, though none of us believed it. A van passed near the entrance and we hid, then we should have left. But we crossed to the far side where there were more horses. And finally, the main house beside it was a massive camper smothered in vines and an old jet ski. Rusting into the earth nearby was a cooler half hidden in weeds, and the smell from it was unbearable. We did not open it. We were heading back when Anthony froze. He heard something in the thick vegetation. We climbed a rock to get a better view. John looked pale when he came down, so I climbed up myself. Over the green tops, I saw a table and a man sitting at it with a black cat. The man had no face, no eyes, no mouth, no features at all beside him. Was a woman who met my eyes and then began running as if to cut us off. We fled through the woods, hearing heavy footfalls and strange screams behind us. That night I could still see that faceless man in my mind, and I still can. The third story was at a quarry in Texas where cliff jumping videos had drawn us and my friends. Miles, Josh, and I drove out signs, warned of trespassers being shot, but we thought, a little of it, we jumped from the smaller cliffs. Then moved deeper into the quarry when a black Hummer arrived. A woman in her 30s shouted, asking what we were doing on her property. She told someone on her phone to get the gun. We froze. She let us go. Only after telling us the police were coming and to run, we ran faster than ever and thought it was over. Months later, Miles convinced me to return. With a bigger group, we parked away from the property and walked in. Someone even warned us about the black Hummer. We laughed. But an hour into swimming, a silver van arrived, gunshots followed, and we ran through the quarry, jumping the fence to reach the dirt road by sheer luck. The man who had warned us before drove by and gave us a ride back to safety. The last story was with my cousin Ryan. We explored an abandoned mansion by a lake. The locals said a family had vanished in the 90s, leaving everything behind, and inside it looked true. Dishes still in the kitchen, photos still on the walls, beds made upstairs. One room was lined with newspapers, all from the same week. Another had windows boarded from the prom inside, and a padlocked closet. We decided to check the basement before leaving. Down there, the air was damp and cold. Shelves lined one wall, but in the center was a circle of 5 chairs, clean as if used recently. Then footsteps sounded above us, slow, deliberate. Moving toward the basement door, the handle rattled, and Ryan dragged me toward a small broken window. We crawled out into the dirt and ran. When I looked back, someone stood in the basement doorway, tall, still head tilted, watching us. Later, Ryan posted online asking about the house. Someone replied saying people had been seen inside, but no one could explain the circle of chairs. We never went back.